put a screen out there to bounce off some of this energy so that there wouldn't be any kind of a extra energy to cause the Earth to expand and set up this conditions for a crustal shift.
Hmm.
So they might do something like, spray reflective particles in the high atmosphere, maybe bounce some of that stuff out of here.
Huh.
Would,
Fascinating.
wouldn't you think that might work?
You would think it. We were actually talking about all these subjects exactly this past week on the website, and yeah, I don't know how it is up there in Washington, or if you guys can rarely see the sky up there from the few times I've been up there, but they've been unbelievable in the area I'm in Colorado lately.
We've been watching them recently because of the cold weather up here and because of our the you have to understand as you get closer to the poles, the atmosphere is also flatter. So
Okay.
we have less atmosphere over us than you do down in Denver, for instance, right? Marginally so because you're way up there. But
Right.
nonetheless, they are spraying, but it isn't taking as well because of the cold. But so we've been able to actually watch them spray the individual lines and then do their X's and their hash patterns. They've been doing it elsewhere these last couple of days because I've actually had clear nights, which is a rarity for us. And I've been hoping to get out and do some observation of the near space. And the only time I can do it, I count on that in the winter. And these last few winters, of course, have been so heavily chemtrailed that we've had no opportunity at all. And it doesn't make sense to spend $99,000 a second on kerosene for chemtrail planes just to keep people from looking up into space when there's only a few of us that have the 3D goggles. But it does make a lot of sense to do this around the whole planet in order to try and shed energy levels.
Huh. Okay, well, and let's while we'll move past the 2012 thing. You said you've been getting a ton of information on aliens, UFOs, things like that lately. What have you been running across coming up for 2011 in that particular category?
Well, we've had actually 2011 is going to be a real key period of time for what I labeled as alien wars. So I have these descriptors that work at an archetype level that I clump underneath all of the stuff that seems to fit within that particular linguistic structure. And one of the structures we've had around, I put all of the, let me back up and say that all of my true woo-woo stuff, all the officially denied, the totally unknown,
Right.
and all the speculative stuff goes into this area that we call space goat farts. As soon as I created this entity back in 2003 or whatever to handle all of the officially unknown and stuff that was just showing up everywhere and getting in the way, and I needed to get it all out and collect it so it could be quasi-controlled. As soon as I created that entity, back in 2003, we started getting these clumps of data that were all around the idea of alien wars. That is, UFO style aliens, extraterrestrial aliens, beings alien to this planet, did not originate here,
Right.
conjoined with the idea of contention and warfare at an archetype level.
Hmm.
Now, just because it was labeled Alien Wars doesn't mean we're actually going to be shooting at aliens with laser beams. Okay, we are doing that, but it wasn't indicative of that. It just meant that at an archetype level, there would be contention within the human society expressed over aliens. And it could actually develop that we're actually shooting at aliens with lasers, but it could also have easily meant that there was a large scale debate brewing in our society as to whether to acknowledge aliens or, build them an embassy or whatever. All of those are immaterial. But as we approach 2011, the data over these past 7 years has hardened, if you will, and clustered and grown within the Alien Wars subset within the Space Goat Farts entity that are all coming to what we call visibility in 2011. Now, visibility is a term that is applied to emotions when they hit the mainstream media.
Hmm.
So there's a degree of visibility. So right now, Alien Wars has a degree of visibility that's been in existence since the 50s, since 47 with the first mainstream media, or actually even before that. Way back into the 1890s, we had airship issues over the U.S. where there were these airships that people saw, which we would call UFOs today.
Right.
Okay, so we've had it in the media since then, but the visibility levels that have been ticking along and growing since the 50s are about ready to bend the knee, we call it in statistical analysis, and that's when you have an exponential curve and the knee of the curve is about ready to be left and you're almost ready to go vertical. So in 2011, our Alien Wars visibility factor we expect to scale up from a 0.007 to almost 1,
Huh.
and 1 being constantly visible, just an accepted part of everyday life. Just like it's no surprise for you to see somebody discuss coffee in the mainstream media or economics. And so we expect by the time 2011 is done that the alien wars in its broader configuration will be that ubiquitous in the discussions that you and I will not think it abnormal at all that they're discussing it on CNN on a daily basis. It'll just be part of everyday life that's going on at that point. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think does it seem to indicate there will be some major event that will make that happen all at once, or just a series of events again, or?
So far, we've been able to identify some specific temporal markers for increases in the visibility, but the data that we've got now could not answer that question as to whether it's going to be an event or the accumulation of consciousness, if you will, that gets us to the stage of that level of visibility. In other words, between now and April 19th, which is the end of the next solar cycle, there's going to be a scale up in the alien wars talk on the mainstream media to the point that we'll have crossed what we've defined here as an internal significant threshold. Now, will it be that there's thousands of WikiLeaks documents that come on out that go to UFOs, or will a UFO show up and splatter itself all over a hillside in Greece? I can't tell from the data. All I know is that the net effect would be the same, that there's going to be enough discussion showing up that some portion of mainstream media will find itself devoting the hours in airtime or the column inches in newspaper language to the discussion of human alien interaction by April 19th. And then we go through a little period of quiescence, and then it scales up again, and it goes to something of a peak. And I'd have to go and check again, but I think the peak is in late September or early October of this year.
Okay.
And then on, it's a plateau. It doesn't drop. It's just a plateau.
Okay. And there's the group of people, a lot of them that listen to the show feel they're abductees or even hybrids, some of them. Is there any indication about how that group of people will transform or be presented in the media potentially, or does that show up?
It does. I don't know that any of my speculations along that line will be meaningful simply because of what we call the detail issue.
Uh-huh.
When we do our work, it's like there's a pyramid, okay? But our pyramid is just a little bit funny because the very bottom of it, where all the details are, is massively wide, and then it takes a very sharp, precipitous, smaller point up to the archetype. So, in other words, I'll drill down in the data and I'll pick up alien wars, and then I'll go on down to genetic manipulation, and then I'll go into genetic manipulation of humans,
Right.
and then I'll go down to say alien interaction, which is another subset of that, and then all of a sudden I'll be presented with 100,000 words, whereas before I was following a trail of 15, 20, 30 at a time,
Hmm.
80 maybe a couple of hundred here, and then all of a sudden I balloon out. So at the point that I'm presented with all of that detail, some of that is significant, and some of it is just noise, so to speak. Something that is not significant or meaningful to us, and it would be my ability to pick that out that would make it or that would bring it up in our discussions, for instance. And I don't know that I'm grabbing the right set of words to make it meaningful. So yes, we see that there's going to be a alteration in the language around this subject, but I don't know that any of my speculations as to how it will occur would be meaningful. But I
Okay.
can tell you that by the time we reach this midsummer solar incident on the 15th, that the alteration will be well underway and should be personally perceivable by individuals that had an interest in that subject. In other words, they'll be able to perceive the shift in language from 2 years ago about the subject over the course of this summer, the language will be entirely different.
Okay.
Make any sense at all?
No, that absolutely does. How do you expect the general public to take the subject? Do you think it'll be something that'll be worked in slowly enough that it won't cause much of a rift or a mass
No,
panic
no,
type deal? Or
it's not an issue at all. They've been educating the powers that be set out in 1957 to educate the 1956, excuse me, to